Hey y'all, and welcome back. I'm Charisma with Traveling with Charisma Cam. I'm a single mother that's teaching parents just like you how to travel with your kids on a budget and have fun while doing it. My kid just happens to have special needs and a disability. So today I want to tell you about an episode of Dr. Thelma, the Homecoming podcast that I was watching. This particular episode was about cultivating patience. It's episode number 72, and I'll post the link for you. I love Dr. Thelma. She's a therapist, and she just gives great advice. And I've determined that she and YouTube have gotten together, and they give me the videos that I need when I need them, because patience is probably something that I really need right now. And I wanted to go over some takeaways and how that relates to everyday life. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was when she said, I will not wait for my dreams to come true to have a fulfilling life. So, a lot of you all have been following me, and you know that I'm traveling pretty much full time. I go back to the States here and there, but I travel with my son. I travel as a single mother, and frankly, I no longer could wait. The reason for me that I couldn't wait is that according to my son's diagnosis, KIF1A, we have a clock, and it's ticking every moment. So if you ever had a clock that said on this day you won't be able to walk again, on this day you won't be able to move, you won't be able to speak or feed yourself, that's kind of what the diagnosis of KIF1A has given my son. Do I claim it? No, I don't. However, I have seen children, teenagers, that went from walking to being in a wheelchair, from their single digits to their double digits, as teenagers. So I decided I'm just gonna take life, take what I've gotten thus far, and I'm gonna go with it. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about what I do and how I've gotten where I am, more about the money, the financial place, because I'm not necessarily where I want to be, but I'm getting there. I'm on track to be there within, for me, probably the next 6 months. And it's a building process from there. So some people may wonder, how does a single mother travel? Well, this journey for me began some years ago. So I had my daughter at 18 years old. I went directly to college. I had her when I was in college, and I graduated with my BSN, Bachelor's in Nursing, in 4 years, which typically most people take 5 years, but I had a baby. I didn't have time to take 5 years. So by about 21, or a few days shy of my 21st birthday, I was an RN. I later would get married and have my son, who has special needs. Well, when that marriage began to fail, when my son was less than a year old, because I'm be honest, y'all, everybody's not built for disability and special needs life. Everybody doesn't want to be the parent of a child with a disability or special needs. Personally, I don't feel like I got a choice. You're my child. You came from me, so I take care of you. That's kind of the memo that I got. But that's not necessarily the memo that my ex-husband got. So I said, my son was in so many therapies. My daughter, I was trying to normalize her life. She was in charter school, and if you know anything about charter school, you are the bus. You pick up, you drop off. At that time, our charter school didn't even provide lunch. So you pick up, you drop off, you make lunches. I mean, you do it all. We were from the ground up charter school at that time. So I was doing all of those things every single day. In addition to taking my son to 5-6 therapies, taking him to doctor's appointments, and maybe a day or two of daycare. And frankly, I couldn't do that and hold a full-time job. I said to myself, I need to make more money in less time. How do I do that? Well, I decided to go back to school. I separated from my ex-husband, of course, now in January, and y'all, by February I had enrolled in a master's degree. Now I tell you, more people thought I was crazy than those that thought I was sane. They said, how the hell are you gonna do a master's degree nursing program, work, and take care of a child with special needs and a child that's in elementary school? I don't know. I am, because what I'm not going to do is be broke and running around here all day long trying to make some money and make some things happen. And y'all, back then there was no Uber, there was no DoorDash, there were no other options. And when you worked as a nurse, you either worked in the hospital 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7, but I didn't even have a sitter and my kids were young. So I didn't really have a whole bunch of choices. I could work full time 5 days a week, but then how was I going to get my son to these therapies? And frankly, 9 to 5, who was going to pick my kid up from school? So these were not options for me. So I went back to school. I got my master's. I did it online. With nursing, nothing is completely online because you still have to go to clinicals. So when it was time to go to clinicals and I was in there 3 to 5 days a week, there were times I had to drop my son off at 7. I had to drop my daughter off at 7. I would not get back to pick them up until 7. Like literally they were there the whole day for me to do clinicals. But I've always been a big proponent. I can do 4 years. I can do 2 years. What I can't do is 2 decades. I can't do 2 decades being broke, struggling. I can struggle for 2 years, y'all. I can struggle for 4 years. I've done it. I lived in the projects while I was getting my bachelor's degree. I graduated on May 24th on my mother's birthday, and by June 1st, I had a signed lease elsewhere. It did not take me long. I left everything out there. Whoever want to take what can take it. I'm out of here. So I can struggle for 2 or 4 years. That's why I tell people, wow, you can't go to school because you can't struggle. Oh, you can struggle for a little bit as long as you got a plan not to struggle in the future. Like I said, wait for my dreams to come true to have a fulfilling life. So I was still fulfilling my life with what I needed to do at that point, which was get an education so I could make more money. So that's what I did. I got an education. I got my master's degree so I can make more money. And I made more money. I more than doubled my salary. I didn't work as many days, and because I nearly doubled my salary, but I did not work full time. I was technically full time, but I was salary. So I learned how to do all my work that I needed to do in the field, and then whatever I could do at home, I would bring it home. So for me, it may be I work 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours. They gave me time to pick up my kids, go to work right away. I was there bright and early, 7:30. You saw me because my kids got dropped off at 7. Picked up my kids, went to work, busted my behind to be done quick. Got off in time to pick my daughter up at 3:30. Pick my son up by 4, and then I did work after that. If my daughter stayed after school, I kept my son a little longer after at his school or daycare, and I bust my butt after that. Y'all, when I was in school, I kid you not, the therapist would see me in the car studying because my son was in therapy. So I would take him to therapy, and I would sit in the car and I would study because I had to utilize what little time I could find to get where I needed to go in these 2 years. I didn't have 3 years like other people because I didn't have anyone else supporting me. So when you gotta hustle, and you gotta hustle fast and hard, you're going to do it. Either that or you're going to suffer the consequences. So I went back to nursing school, became a nurse practitioner. Money was great. I'm going to be honest. Eventually, I got up to 6 figures. So money was great. The thing about me is as my money rose, my bills did not. I am not a believer of keeping up with the Joneses or the damn Kardashians. So I remember a friend saying, Charisma, you need to get a new car. You're a nurse practitioner. Why don't you have, a nicer car? Honey, this Toyota right here, this Hyundai Santa Fe, it gets me where I need to go. It has great gas mileage. It does everything I needed to do. And my Santa Fe was almost paid off. I only had a few payments left. So I was going to ride that thing till the wheels fell off. And there was nothing wrong with it. Perfect car. I bought it brand new. No, ma'am. Those $1,000, $2,000 bags, Y'all do you, but I'm too cheap for that. Like Michael Kors Coach outlet was always always my thing. And honestly, y'all, when I moved, I sold it and gave it away anyway, so it didn't really matter. But so that's to say that when my income increased, when my income became six figures, I was still living on a 45, 50, $60,000 income. So it doesn't matter what, even if you live off of 20,000 and your income becomes 40, that doesn't mean you have to live off of 40,000 then. You can still live off of 20,000. And I'm not saying, oh, I didn't do anything. I went and bought another house. So that's what brings me to the next part of my journey. I had a house, and I decided I didn't want to live in that area anymore because it didn't suit my son's needs for school. At this time, my daughter was in her last couple of years of high school. So I bought a new house. What I did with that house was I rented it out. I looked at the plans for that county and I saw that county was going to be booming in the next couple of years. So whether I wanted to live there or not, that house was going to make me plenty of money, especially considering it was a 5-bed, 3-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. So I kept that house and I bought a new house. Now, my new house, I negotiated and I put down 10 or so % on that new house because don't forget, y'all, I would save. I would, even with my refund check, I would just let that refund check sit. Unless we were going on a vacation, I'm going to be honest, I've always been a vacationer. So unless we were going on vacation, I didn't really spend. So I kept my money. I kept saving. So when I bought my new house, I was able to put a good down payment on that new house. I also bought it pre-foreclosure. So I will also let you know that when I bought my first house, I bought it in the middle of when all the market crash happened. So I bought it as a bank foreclosure. It was a brand new house. However, it was a bank foreclosure. So it was so much cheaper than everybody else's house in the neighborhood. So when I moved in that house, I knew that I already had equity. All I had to do was sit. So when I left that house, I went into this house. And it took me 10 years, y'all. It took me 10 years. It was 5 years after I had divorced. So I'm not saying I was jumping houses left and right. It took me a minute. So I got into this new house and I got into it right before COVID hit. We were there Halloween before COVID. And then COVID hit. So we didn't even really get a chance to experience the school system. We started doing the virtual school, which really was worksheets. My daughter was at home, kind of suffering from that junior, senior-itis combined with COVID. And shit got real. It really did. During that time, my job, I was working with geriatrics, seeing patients in their home, and they decided we needed to stay home, of course. So they put us into these different positions. And the positions, you were basically a COVID triage nurse. And I remember I had a phone call, and the patient was a nurse, and the patient was coughing and had shortness of breath. And my very first nursing experience was an ICU nurse at Grady Hospital. If you know Atlanta, you know Grady. If you want to live, come to Grady. If you just got a boo-boo, go somewhere else. But if you dying and you want to live, you go to Grady because it's the top trauma hospital. So that's where I was trained. And as I'm on the phone with this nurse in the middle of COVID, the beginning phases, those first couple of months when, it was like an episode of Outbreak, basically, these phases. And I'm seeing patients, and this nurse is coughing and has shortness of breath. And I knew that this patient needed to be intubated and go on a ventilator. So basically, he or she needed a breathing machine. A nurse had just left their shift and now needed to go in the hospital on a breathing machine. Well, y'all, if y'all remember, at this point, when you went on that machine, You didn't come off. It was basically a death sentence. If you came off, I mean, basically you were in the news because nobody came off. People were fighting not to go on because nobody was coming off. Well, that traumatized me. You know, this is really the first time I'm really admitting I was traumatized by that experience. I couldn't sleep. I could not rest. I could not relax. And I was still triaging COVID calls. I would hear the children that were also coughing and having a difficult time breathing. I would hear the moms crying, is my child gonna die? And I could not give any certainty that they weren't. At this point, we were just trying to keep the hospital so that if we thought you were gonna die, we could get you some kind of treatment, because y'all know these hospitals were insane. So I took a leave of absence. As a mother with a daughter, a teenage daughter, a single mother with a teenage daughter, a son with a disability, I couldn't take one more call. I didn't have it in me. So I took a leave of absence. And I said, I got to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. Because I have a daughter and I have a son that I don't know what COVID will do to him. And frankly, there is no employer in this world that is worth my life. There is no job, no amount of money in this world that is worth my children being without a mother, without a parent. So I took that leave of absence. And during that time, I said, what are you going to do? Because see, I've always been a nurse, whether it's an RN, a nurse practitioner. I'm 37, y'all. I've been a nurse for almost 2 decades. So that's what I know. That's who I am, right? So if that's who I am, who else can I be? I mean, yeah, okay, I have a rental property. But y'all, my tenants were cool. My tenants were good. They paid their rent. My house was always kept up because I don't like stuff breaking on me. So the house was always in great shape. And what was I going to do? So I said, okay, I want to be in real estate. Let me start studying real estate. So I start studying real estate. I go into some groups because right now, y'all, we're getting money. We're getting paid. I'm on leave, so I get a percentage of my pay for my leave. We're getting COVID support. So, you know, everybody was getting these checks every so often. So we're getting money. And I said, if there was ever a time that I was going to use my time wisely and use my funds wisely, this was it. You know, because when we sit here and tell ourselves we have all these dreams, we have all these things that we want, you know, and we say, God, can you give me this? Universe, can you give me that? Well, for the first time, you had to be still. You ain't had nowhere to go. You ain't have nothing to do. You were in your house making TikTok videos on Facebook, you know, doing whatever you really wanted to do. Half the jobs didn't even know what the hell to do with you. So at a time where you were getting income to basically sit at home, if there was ever a time to recreate yourself, that was it. And I'm going to tell y'all, I'm all for recreating myself. I already told you, I've recreated myself multiple times. I went from high school student to college student to teenage parent to graduate to married to single mom. to nurse practitioner. I'm all about recreation. Don't ever sleep on charisma and think that what you see is what you get, because you never know when I'm going to pull out my hat of tricks. So, y'all about to pay me to sit here and figure out what the hell I'm about to do in my life? Bet. So that's what I did. I took courses. I took classes. I got a coach. And y'all, coaches are expensive. I'm going to tell you, because I'm a coach as well. I don't think I'm as expensive as some, but coaches are expensive. But if you know how to barter, you can also barter. You may have some services, as I did, to coach someone else. So I got a coach for me, and I coached that person's daughter. Because she was a nursing student, and I coach nursing students. I help you get from student to nurse. So don't ever think, oh, I don't have the money. Oh yeah, you may not have money, but it's not always about money. You may have a talent. You could, if you have something that is worth that money, then that's all that you need. So I did the real estate thing. I was like, I don't feel like my heart is here. So I said I wanted to start working more with special needs parents and elderly and stuff like that, but in a different capacity. And that's actually why I got the coach. So I started doing that, and I did that for a little bit. But in the same token of what happened with me with COVID is what happened with me working with special needs and geriatrics. What I found is that the caregivers were not in the place that I'm in. And I have to say, I'm very unique in the place of acceptance that I am in with my son. I accept, but I don't make it all my own, if that makes sense. I accept that my son has KIF 1A. I accept that he has a level of autism. I accept that he uses crutches to walk. I accept that the prognosis sucks. That means, where we expect this to be in a few years is bad. I accept those things, but I'm not bringing those things on. I'm not bringing on and making it part of me and my being and my son's being that he won't be able to walk at 16. You see what I'm saying? I'm not taking on all of that stuff and making it my own and staying in my head, because I've done that. I did that when he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And I did that when he was diagnosed with KIF 1A. I took a good year, maybe even more, and did that. But like I said, with everything else, it all comes to an end. Maybe it's a year, 2, 3, but I'm not staying there. And for me, working with people that were staying there was draining my spirit and draining my soul. Not being able to motivate them to go to the next level was a little too much for me. And that's something that you have to realize about yourself. You have to know when this is a little bit over your head. You need something a little lighter, and that's okay. It's okay to be selfish sometimes and say, I got to worry about me. Because a lot of times you got to worry about you, and you got to worry about somebody else, whether it's your kids, your spouse, your parents. There's other people that are dependent on you to make sure that you put you first. Because if you don't put you first, who the hell else is going to put you first? If you don't put you first, ain't nobody gonna put you first, because you're not that important to anybody else. I'm just gonna be honest. You are not as important to anyone in this world as you are to your immediate circle, whether your immediate circle is family or your immediate circle is friends. I always told people, because I had this happen to a coworker of mine, and I'll never forget it. I was in my early 20s. She will work her ass off. When I tell you, she will work through the night. They could call her whenever they wanted to. We had on-call nurse, and for where she worked, they never even called an on-call nurse, because she was the on-call nurse. She worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when she did something that they didn't like, Y'all, after years of working there, the employer took her out of the building. After years of building that up, years of slaving, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and she wasn't a single woman. She was married with a child. A year or two later, she died. Not one of them attended her funeral. Not one of those bosses attended her funeral. They sent her the same spray we send everybody else. And at the time, I worked in hospice. So they sent her the same thing that we sent the patients, every patient that was on that roster. No more, no less. She worked her ass off. And I said, well, you know what? Your death will not be in vain, because if I never learned another lesson at an employer, I know I will never work my ass into the grave for them. Y'all, I'm telling you. So, now I forgot where I was. So y'all, I forgot where I was. So this is what happened when you go off on a tangent. But when I tell you, you know, it's been over a decade and that still sticks with me. But so I continue on in my journey, and I just decided I no longer want to work directly with special needs and disabilities. So I decided I'm going to go back to trying to do the real estate. I switched. I'm ready to start traveling. Some things have transpired, so I still haven't gone back to work yet, and it's been months, even longer than my leave time. Still haven't gone back to work yet, and I was like, I want to travel. What am I going to do? At this point, I have taken money that I've acquired during COVID, and I've done some investing on a smaller scale, but it seemed like big money to me. You know, there's been some crowdfunding. I invested in an apartment home with about 20 something units. I invested in a duplex, and I've also invested in some corporate property as well. So I have definitely started taking steps of investment. These steps, though, I won't see real good investments for probably 5 to 10 years. So my leave ended up being extended for some medical reasons. And we were getting closer to time for me to go back to work. May of 2021, my daughter graduated high school, and I had always said, you know, since she was in 9th grade, that when she graduated high school, we will leave. Well, COVID gave me the opportunity to explore that, because he went from virtual public school to putting him in a actual virtual charter school, which he did okay for a year. The teacher turnover and ratio was really bad. So eventually we left that. And then that summer we had off, 2021, after my daughter graduated, I decided, let's give this traveling thing a try. I was completely frustrated and fed up with everything. I had already started looking for a job in the psychiatric field, because I knew if I did psych, I would be able to work online. So I had secured something, but it wasn't online. So I was like, well, let me take some time to travel until I start working again. And so that summer we did almost a month in Panama, almost a month in Costa Rica. The reason I chose those places is because that's where my grandmother was born, Costa Rica, and raised in Panama. So it was part of me tracing my roots. And y'all, I went to these places and they were rough, but that's another video. So I got back and got back to Georgia in time for Cameron, my son, to start school. And he was going to the virtual academy. And y'all, I hated it. Oh my goodness. Y'all talk about hate. I hated being back in Atlanta. I despise being, anybody that has ever left the country for a month or more, they can understand that when you get back, you really, really don't care to be in America anymore. And I said, y'all, I got to get up out of here. So I made a plan. Y'all know I recreate. I'm a recreator. I made a plan, and I discovered Stephanie Perry in the Exodus Summit, and helping Black women leave America. That was one of my studying tools, y'all, was the Exodus Summit. You know, that's what I had been doing thus far. That was another thing in addition to the real estate and coaching caregivers. I started studying how to leave America. So I decided to sell my house. I hadn't lived there not even 2 years. So I had to wait capital gains tax, y'all. Make sure y'all know about that. Do not sell a house before 2 years because you will get taxed out of the, yeah. So I decided to sell my house. And by this time, my house was worth more than I paid for it in less than 2 years. I thought about renting it out, but, you know, when I looked at it, it was only going to get me about $500 a month, which for me, I mean, that's good, but for me, that wasn't enough to justify being a landlord to this property in a subdivision. There was too much red tape with the subdivision, and frankly, I need to make at least $700 for me to justify. I think it was like $300 to $400 a month. That the rent was going, and of course that would increase. I'm sure that's increased now, but for me, I needed cash on hand. I already had a rental property, so I wanted cash on hand. So selling this house gave me cash on hand. And what I did, I watched the market. So I watched the market fluctuate. That's when Zillow was buying up all those houses and then almost bankrupted themselves because they were buying so many. So I watched the numbers fluctuate in my subdivision, and once, because everybody will put all their houses up at once, so it may maybe be 3 or 4 houses on the market at one time. Don't ever put your house up when it's that many houses at one time. Even though they were going quick, Zillow was running the prices down. So these houses that probably, let's say they could have went for $300,000, were going for $270 because Zillow was buying it. Well, when Zillow buys it, they pay you less money. They pay you less money because what Zillow does is they can close in like 10 or 15 days. Like they can close very quickly, much quicker than anything else. And even if they're not closing that quickly, they can give you a check that quickly and then resell or sit on your house. So it was driving the prices down. So I watched that. I watched it throughout the summer, even while I was traveling. And I'm going to tell y'all what I did with my house while I was traveling. I'll tell you about that in another video. So even while I was traveling, I was watching those numbers decrease. So when I came back and I started to see there were a lot less houses on the market. There may be one here, then that would sell, and then there was one there and that would sell. But the prices were starting to stabilize a little bit. So I waited until 1-2 roads away from me sold, and then there was one in my cul-de-sac right across the street from me. This house was actually on a basement though. However, I knew that house, what that house sold for, would definitely determine what my house would sell for. So I watched it, and then when it went under contract, because they first priced it too high. I don't know who their realtor was, but it was priced way too high, so it wasn't getting any hits. So it sat much longer than houses sit on the market, you know, in this market. So I watched it, and eventually it sold. It went under contract, and when it went under contract, there were no more houses in my subdivision ready to be sold. That's when I put my house on the market. That's when I sold my house. And I actually got offered 30,000 more than what I put my house on the market for. The very, like, within 24 hours. So we put it on maybe on a Thursday, Friday. We let it sit till Monday. We said that's all offers, and I sold it. That was it. And that was the beginning of my journey. So next time, because I've been talking for a while now, let me know if you have any questions. So for the next version of our Money Matters section, I'm going to tell you how I went from getting my house under contract to moving, to actually leaving the US. Because as I told you before, I only had a taster when I went to Panama and Costa Rica, but I still had a house to come back to. You know, at this point, I'm going to be dependent on other people, and things are going to look a little different. How did I continue to make money? How did I continue to pull in income? Am I still investing? What happens next? How, you know, am I just going to keep working for someone forever? How often do I work? All of those things, because as a single mom, we are it. We are the bread, we're the butter, and we're the damn biscuit. So basically, it's on me to do what I need to do to keep this gravy train running. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share the channel. And be sure to comment. Ask me any questions, anything you want me to put in the next video. If you want to know more about certain parts of this video, I really didn't go into detail. Even though it was long, it really wasn't a lot of detail to certain things. So I can put out more videos on the things that really interest y'all. Because what I think is important or what I don't think is important, you may feel like it's super important. So let me know, y'all. All right. Ciao.